Hey guys, welcome to Boxing Squared for boxing news and views from around the internet. The Olympic bronze medalist Frazer Clarke returned from an injury layoff to log his second pro win of his career, stopping the usually rugged and durable Ariel Bracamonte inside 2 rounds. And you gotta say, this was a decent opponent for a second fight, but I guess at 30 years old, they want to push Frazer Clarke and make sure that he's not languishing as, with a lot of low-level opponents. So they're looking to push him a bit quicker. And I know some people were a little bit sort of surprised Bracamonte was the guy for the second fight, but ultimately it's proved out that Frazer Clarke had too much for Bracamonte, landing a huge left hook coming off a clinch near the end of round 2. That put Bracamonte down, and the referee, after Bracamonte beats the count, doesn't like what he sees and waves it off. And there was no complaint by Bracamonte, but I think the body language from Bracamonte ahead of that knockdown hadn't been good. He'd been caught with a couple of shots complaining of a rabbit punch, and the referee John Latham even stopped proceedings for about 30 seconds because of the complaints about rabbit punches. And it was not long after that Bracamonte was put down when the action resumed. So make of that what you will, but it looked like Bracamonte was sending out some distress signals that he wasn't really looking to stay in there for much longer. And he didn't complain about the stoppage one bit. But he gets his payday, he walks away, and I think this was the 5th or 6th time that Bracamonte had been stopped. But there is a divide in terms of those wins where Bracamonte gets stopped and he doesn't. So on one side you have the guys like Dave Allen, Jarrell Miller, who've taken several rounds, that sort of stuff. Miller couldn't put a dent in him recently. And you've had other guys, say Honoreme Ihrami, and some others who've stopped Bracamonte, Rafael Tronch. So it shows this win from Frazer Clarke. He's got some pop, he's got some power, and if he catches you, he can hurt you, he can put you down. And ultimately, Bracamonte was taken out here. The referee didn't like what he saw. So we'll come to a few more thoughts in a second, because there were Miller comparisons by the commentators. I'm not sure that it's really like for like, but after the fight, Frazer Clarke, who'd been coming back from a thumb injury, and you can see here this was after the surgery had happened, a post back in March. So his career, sort of the arc in terms of getting him out every couple of months, just had been delayed slightly, but he spoke of the thumb, saying it felt good, felt perfect, and he didn't have any discomfort, and that was really good to be back there. And he spoke of that he had to be sharp of mind. Bracamonte was really rugged. He threw some straight jabs, catching Clarke in the first round in particular. But he says, I love doing this. I love being involved in the sport, and it's good to be back, and I just love boxing. So, didn't really sort of take too much out of that, except to say that he didn't feel any discomfort from the thumb, and was obviously, as he said multiple times, glad to be back in the swing of things. And given they've matched him relatively tough in the second pro fight, I mean, Bracamonte might be a guy that people face normally when they're sort of 10, 12, 15 fights, that sort of stuff. Sometimes it might be a keep busy, or in the case of Jarrell Miller, it was a comeback fight. Miller was taken all 10 rounds, and the commentators were certainly quick to point that out. And obviously Miller, 340 odd pounds, coming back in his first comeback fight after taking every banned substance under the sun a few years back, and on a couple of different occasions. He couldn't put a dent in Bracamonte at all. But obviously, with his time out of the ring, he hadn't fought for about 3 years professionally. He needed some rounds, and he got that in Argentina against Bracamonte. And let's face it, that performance with Bracamonte going 10 rounds probably got Bracamonte this fight, because you can draw that comparison with, look, Jarrell Miller has fought at a certain level. Jarrell Miller has a certain profile. Jarrell Miller does this, that, and the other. then you can compare Frazer Clarke and especially the stoppage versus Miller. And there were certainly a lot of linkages made during the fight by the commentators about that. And I guess you can take something from it, but it's not the be-all and end-all, because Miller's not necessarily a big puncher, and he probably wanted those rounds anyway in his first comeback fight. So I think all we can really take out of it is that Clarke does have a bit of pop. And if he catches you, and Bracamonte is a big man with sloppy defense, and he can be caught, he can be stopped and knocked out, it does show that you do have some power. I don't necessarily want to take this all the way over the top and go Frazer Clarke's the next big thing, because I think we need to see a bit more. But Clarke, he did land some nice shots in there, but he was also caught with a few himself. And he obviously in his post-fight interview referenced those jabs. But I guess the question is, what next? What is Sky going to do with him? 30 years old, they want to push. Clarke has talked about wanting to be pushed faster along the prospect sort of phase, a la Joe Joyce, not just facing bin men and taxi drivers out of Tijuana, etc., or Bulgaria, whatever. But we shall see, because obviously he's still got a few years worth of development and the sort of requisite fights before he's going to get to anything meaningful. So they are going to have to balance the speed of building him along as a product on Sky versus, the realities that he's not going to get a title shot this year, next year, or possibly even the year after. At the moment, he's a 2-0 guy. No one's going to be pitching him in or accepting a challenge from him anytime soon. It's not to say, once he's 10, 15 fights that he's not going to get into a decent position, but he's got to have those fights between now and then to put himself into position. So we'll have to see. I mean, they were looking to match him with Gabriel Nguema, another tough, durable journeyman who's got a little bit of nous and can be quite finicky and make things a little bit difficult for you. So maybe they'll look to reschedule that one. He was due to face him, and then he had his thumb injury, which apparently feels good after the fight. So 2-0 now. Frazer Clarke, what do you make of it all? Drop a comment, loud and often. Hit like, hit subscribe. Follow me on Twitter, boxing_squared. I'm out.